As you sow, so shall you reap. In other words, you harvest what you plant. You get out what you put in is what this essentially means. We have just emerged from the direst, darkest years in the entire history of this country. Never before has the country been so close to complete and utter collapse, including open conflict that would have almost certainly escalated into open civil war. Under Donald Trump's example, his hateful, delusional cult of followers were empowered and emboldened. And certainly a number of those dangerous followers were authority figures, many of them police, which led to possibly the worst period of open police brutality as well. As someone who is a member of multiple minorities, it was for me a time of great uncertainty and great danger. We see what can happen when someone like that takes high office. The damage that has been done in these past 4 years will take decades to fix, if it is even possible to fix. The country has been saved from being driven into a proverbial iceberg, but it's going to take a long time before we are anything close to being okay. And that, along with many, many other reasons, is why I say this. Do not forgive. Do not forget. Do not reach out after the election to start the healing process or any other such thing. The people who supported Trump and his campaign of hate and outright evil, and I don't use that term lightly, after 4 years of this wretched destruction of everything this country ever stood for, are irredeemable. They are not going to come around. They do not care about you. They hate you, and they will never love you. They view any attempt at reconciliation, kindness, empathy, forgiveness, charity, all these things to them are simply weak and liberal. At their root, they ignorantly hate liberals, whatever that means to them. They don't understand anything about liberals or anything about progress. If anything, the Republicans, and especially the Trump followers, are the very same snowflakes they purport to hate so much. Now we're seeing that vividly with their babyish reactions to being bitch-slapped by a majority that are sick of their nonsense. But to step slightly aside on a mild tangent here, now abideth faith, hope, and charity, and the greatest of these is love. Why, you ask, am I whipping out all of these biblical quotes? It's another thing that the Republican Party, and especially Trump's cult, love to use as an excuse for their hatred and evil acts. They justify these things by using religion as all the reason they need for what they do. They're always claiming persecution despite all evidence to the contrary, and they're fast to unite each other under the premise of religious unity. But they are not Christian. Not a single goddamn one of them. None of them knows anything at all about Jesus. Certainly not how he chased the money changers out of the temple. They have never heard him state that it would be more likely to get a camel through the eye of a needle than a super-rich person to get into heaven. We must not forget Trump quite literally tearing families apart and putting people, including children, into concentration camps. And yes, that's what those are and always were. We must not forget his grab her by the pussy line. We must not forget his collaboration with Russia, which was more than adequately proven, by the way. We must not forget his money over people philosophy. We must not forget his abuses to the gay, lesbian, trans, and in general queer communities, to say nothing of his abuses to any community of color and any minority. We must not forget him and his crony Pence being absolutely okay with conversion therapy and conversion camps, too. These are things that should never be put out of memory, and should never be excused for any reason. My dear friend and housemate once said to his wealthy Republican uncle, "Whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, that you do unto me." And do you know what the man replied? "Who said that, Hillary?" This from a man who, despite having great means and resources, had never once helped my friend's extremely poor family, and instead chose to lecture his single mother on how she should have months of bill money in her bank account at any time. This is who they are. Do not forgive them, and never forget what they have done. Do not pretend like you can ever trust them again with anything, because they more than adequately prove that your lives mean nothing to them. They are okay with anything happening to you, and they're okay with you dying. Don't kid yourself. They're okay with you dying horribly. They don't care about you. If they say they do, they're lying and they don't understand what love actually means. And it's probably motivated out of some form of fear, because that is entirely what their lives are based on and revolve around. It's fear. Naked, shameful fear governing their every move. They're flailing desperately and pathetically now, because for once that tactic didn't work. They were told they were wrong, and they can't handle that. They were empowered by the example of a cult leader, a demagogue, and emboldened by thinking that they were invincible and irrefutable. Propaganda outlets like Fox News fed them a continuous line of bullshit so shameless that even tabloids would blush and pause. They have been given nothing but that same input this whole time. And that is why I say to cut out anyone from your life who voted for, supported, or excused Trump. And what's more, distance yourself from anyone who identifies with or supports the Republican Party. These people are not going to see the light or be touched by your gesture of continuing to relate to them and have them in your life. Your friendship and forgiveness is wasted on such people. They cannot reciprocate the friendship, and they will not. You cannot count someone as a friend if that same person is okay with your death or indefinite internment in a concentration camp created by their beloved leader. If you forgot what those were created for, let me remind you with a very ugly word I hoped we would never see again in our lifetimes. Genocide. And yes, the entire Republican Party is complicit. They have proudly attempted to undermine our entire government. I don't think our government is particularly great or respectable, but the most pissant train wreck of a town hall is a refreshing world-class experience after the past 4 years of what can only technically be called national leadership. The Republican Party has worked for decades to make the United States a dictatorship benefiting only them and no one else. The past 4 years have proven very ably that they will eagerly support anyone they think empowers them to act openly on their hate and fear which they rely upon to govern by. They are nothing good for anyone, not even themselves, and after this past 4 years, any party that stands by that, any party that wants that for this country and even the world, must be opposed. They refused to take the action that only they could take, when investigations into corruption and election tampering showed that yes, Trump was suspect enough not to be trusted with confidential information relating to the government of this country. They refuse to punish their own, perhaps because they fear it will make them all be held accountable for their many acts of wrongdoing. And I'm not saying that just because something is illegal that it is necessarily wrong or bad. For something to be illegal does not make it immoral. It also is a modifier, not a noun. Anyone using the word illegal as if it is a noun is using it not only incorrectly, but offensively, which ties us right back to the Republican Party and Trump's brainless cultists, which are one and the same. When you are a political leader and a major figure of authority, the price you pay for that is absolute accountability. When you establish rules and set the example for an entire nation of people, you must be held to them totally. That is the agreement you make for that power. Your actions have far greater repercussions than just yourself and the small number of people around you at that point. You cannot be allowed to simply have carte blanche to act as your whims please you. But all that aside, the things he did are unforgivable and tremendously outright evil. He made no effort to disguise them or his motivations for doing what he did. He has utterly undermined and sabotaged every aspect of the government of this country, raising the question of whether or not the United States even functions as a union. It will take years to even address a handful of the many problems he has emphatically made worse. We are, in essence, propping up a house that has visibly started to collapse and hoping we can get some carpenters in time to stop it from falling down. As I've mentioned multiple times now, because I want you to remember, Trump decided to resurrect the execrable concentration camp and put people in them, despite widespread protest and the very existence of them being in open defiance of global human rights treaties. He got rid of the office established under Obama to address the pandemic, which had been predicted by multiple health sources and specifically coronavirus. He furthermore worked to undermine the work of the CDC and other firms that were trying to address the pandemic. And he further blathered on with unscientific nonsense and politicized the unprecedented global tragedy, the likes of which no one currently living has ever witnessed. He made masks and precautions a political act, which not only put lives in danger, but directly caused deaths. He is responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people at least. Directly. Not even indirectly. Directly. Think about that and let it sink in for just a moment. Everyone still supporting him, everyone who voted for him made a statement with that vote. With that statement, they declared those lives as meaningless to them. They couldn't even bother to have that much empathy. And these are the same people who parade around Christ and the cross like they have anything to do with the beliefs laid out in the Christian Bible. Jesus of Nazareth would spit on them. He would never have anything to do with such wicked people. Trump's supporters and Republicans both must be marginalized. They must be removed from our lives. They should be made a laughingstock that no one admires, a decidedly unfunny joke that is its own punchline, and that is shame and embarrassment to be affiliated with them. No one should ever want to be like them or to be them. We must do what Mel Brooks has done with his humor. Nazis, fascists, and the like should be made examples of. Examples of what no one should ever idolize or admire. They are to be laughed at best. They must not be allowed to know us, to be close to us, and we must never let down our guard around them. Remember the story of the scorpion and the frog. Because of its nature, the scorpion stung the frog halfway across the water and doomed them both. That is the situation this country has been in for the past 4 years at least. Do not reach out to them. Do not continue relationships with Republicans and Trump supporters. Do not make nice with them and do not help them. They do not want help, and they will not be grateful for it. They will use you and betray you, and the first chance they get, they will sell you out or attempt to destroy you or destroy your life. They cannot be trusted with your safety or well-being, because they are not trustworthy or safe people. They do not esteem anyone but themselves, and they constantly turn on each other. Do not support their businesses, and do not support any business related to them. Do not have anything to do with them in any way. There is nothing they could possibly offer you that you cannot get somewhere else. If you have family that you are tempted to reach out to, don't. If you are stuck living with family who are Republicans or Trump supporters, cut yourself off emotionally from them. You cannot trust them. Get out at the first opportunity and don't look back. You will get there, especially if we are all willing to do this difficult thing. Society tells us that we should love our family, but society is wrong. It's a meaningless tradition. It's a hard time right now, but we have to do this. Even the old saying, blood is thicker than water, really is supposed to mean the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. That means that the people you choose to form friendships and relationships with are more important than the family you happen to be randomly born into. Remember that, and take that with you every single day. Don't go to the family reunion. You shouldn't anyway, due to the plague that was made much worse by Trump, the Republican Party, and politicizing wearing masks and taking precautions so that illness won't be spread. Don't go to Thanksgiving or Christmas. You don't want to spend time around these people anyway. You can thank Trump for things being just as bad as they are, though. And if you really need a reason not to attend, just throw that in their face. 'Cause guess what? Making a pandemic worse doesn't make for charming family gatherings. Don't speak to relatives just because it's Christmas or just because they're old or you used to like them when you were a child and they could just dismiss you offhand. Don't give your love and affection to people who don't deserve it and won't reciprocate. It is not a limitless commodity. Your love and affection, your attention and support, and all the good things you can share with others are better directed to those who actually need it and will appreciate it. You are wasting it on one-way toxic relationships with people who shouldn't be in your life and take it for granted. Yes, we have plenty of other work to do. We must remember that government and politicians are there to reflect our ideals and needs, not a handful of bigots' childish, petty whims and wants. We must also remember that we are a majority when we come together, which means that if we wanted to, we could, not without effort, simply throw the whole thing out and start over again with entirely new framework and certainly new people. They have their jobs by our sufferance, not by any unique merit of their own. Let that empower you more than a fearful, fear-mongering dictator. We are going to have to be vigilant, insistent, and assertive in the next few years especially, or we're going to lose everything, essentially forever. We cannot afford, none of us in any minority group, to do that. We must come together and make the choice as one to excise these people from our lives and our worlds. The energy we put into dealing with them is better applied rebuilding our broken country and our difficult lives. We will never progress if all we do is keep ourselves held back by people who are, at best, throwbacks to a dark age, a place we never should go and never should want to return the world to.